Hey tournament fans, Abby here with an evening update. The much anticipated champion selections took place just hours ago. All in attendance were eager to see which 3 young people would bear this great honor. 3 names were pulled out of the cup, and they were as follows. The handsome Hufflepuff, Cedric Diggory, was named as Hogwarts champion, and the beautiful Fleur Delacour will represent Beauxbaton. And Quidditch superstar Victor Crumb will be championing for Darmstrang. After the champions had been named, to everybody's shock, a 4th name came out of the cup, Harry Potter, a 14-year-old student. Disbelief filled the room at this highly irregular situation. With the age restriction imposed and certain measures taken to prevent anyone under the age of 17 from entering, everyone seems to be wondering the same thing. How did Potter enter? A decision has been made to allow Potter to participate. Other information we are hearing tonight is contestants have not been told what the first task will entail, and they also will receive a nice perk. At the end of the year, the champions will be exempt from all of their exams. It has been one exciting night here at Hogwarts. And even more exciting, we now have odds in our favor.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Melissa.
I'm Luke.
And you have stumbled upon our chapter-by-chapter read-through of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This episode, we are discussing chapter number 17, The 4 Champions. This chapter was 16 pages long and was 2.18% of the book. Hey, Benjamin, why don't you tell us what just happened?
As the shock of hearing his name called comes over him, Harry makes his way to the front of the Great Hall, where he enters the side chamber with the other champions. Fleur thinks he's there to deliver a message, but the room is suddenly filled with all the heads of the schools, as well as teachers and fellow judges, Barty Crouch and Ludo Bagman. Madame Maxine and Cockcroft are angry and suspicious, thinking foul play giving Hogwarts 2 champions. Dumbledore is obviously upset, but believes Harry when he tells him that he didn't put his name into the goblet. Snape is certain that Harry managed to cheat, but Moody enters and begins speculating morbidly. He reminds them that having your name come out of the goblet is an unbreakable contract, and that means Harry has to compete, and who knows, maybe die in the process. He tells them that a very strong charm must have been used to confuse the goblet, causing 4 champions to have been chosen. Mr. Crouch agrees that Harry must compete per the rules, and informs the champions that the tournament will consist of 3 surprise tasks beginning next month, and the first is to test the students' daring. Harry and Cedric leave the side chamber together, and Harry repeats his innocence, but Cedric doesn't seem to believe him. Once he makes his way to the Gryffindor common room, he is met with a wall of sound as he enters, and everyone celebrating him being picked. Well, everyone apart from Ron, who he finds sulking in their bedroom. Ron is sure Harry found a way to fool the age line, and just didn't want to share the glory, even with him.
All right, let's go ahead and start talking about our new character introductions. We get a first name. Mad-Eye Moody is not actually named Mad-Eye. His mother did not put that on his birth certificate. He is Alastair. Alastair Moody, which is slightly better than Mad-Eye, but not really. So you're looking for baby names? Mad-Eye is still a viable option. We also have Violet, the painting. Mm-hmm. The very nosy, wizened witch painting.
Yeah, rumor mill, if you will.
I know, right?
Gossip.
A one-woman Twitter. Hashtag.
Yeah, basically.
And then there's no new locations. Except for maybe like the little small room off the side, which we haven't been in, unless that was the room that the first years waited in.
Yeah, I think that was outside on the back side, like before you go in. Right. So yeah, that should be here, I think. The small room behind the teacher's table.
I didn't really notice any magicabulary, did you?
No, I didn't really catch anything. There's a lot of complaining in this chapter.
Yes, a lot of raised voices and some calm ones, but
very
no
calm
words
ones
coming from those people.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. We do have an illustration. I'm a really big fan of this picture. It is Harry with his, like, Anakin Skywalker looming Darth Vader shadow reaching out in front of him. He looks so small.
I really like that. Yeah, and it's Well, it's yes, he is small, but sometimes even a small character can cast a large shadow kind of thing. Because I know, and I have a note on this later to touch on how tall the other champions looked.
Same.
But even his shadow here might kind of symbolically represent that, yeah, maybe not in true height he's the same, but in this reflected stature, he's equal. So I think we'll touch on that here in a little bit, but I really like this one. I actually hadn't looked at this before we did this. I think it's very, very interesting because he's definitely alone and he feels very alone. And, I like the shadow being cast. That's a cool thing that they added in here.
There's a lot of emotion in this picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More than in most of the things we look at. So.
I agree. And because a lot of times it's like, oh, let's pick an object that's in the chapter and just bring it in. You know, we have like the Monster Book of Monsters or the Goblet of Fire, or like, hey, here's a couple trees because we're going into the forest. This is, like you said, a very emotion-filled illustration compared to a lot of others. And it's
interesting
cool.
Because we don't get a lot of emotion from Harry. There's a lot of talking and Harry is not involved. And so this picture, more than most pictures, does a really good job of setting up what Harry's doing, that this picture adds to the story as opposed to just rehashes something from the story.
It's not just a bookmark of this chapter. It's literally kind of part of it. It kind of projects itself into this chapter in a cool way.
Yes, and sets the tone.
I agree with you. It's good illustration.
All right, so Luke, let's go ahead and jump into some of your thoughts about this chapter.
Speaking of setting the tone, the opening lines of this chapter are so good. Like the first page and a half, I just love how much it goes right along with the illustration too of how Harry feels singled out. He feels like he's being put on display and he didn't ask for any of this. You know, it says there was no applause, a buzzing as though angry bees was starting to fill the hall, which I like. I love the sound of silence reference. I love, a heavy silence. I always like that kind of imagery. And he's just like frozen to his seat. He's afraid to go up there because, as he says, I didn't put my name in. And like the Hufflepuffs are mad at him, trying to upstage after a big kind of win for them, because again, Hufflepuff never gets any kind of respect. And finally, they're kind of put on this pedestal, and it feels like, oh, well, here's Harry Potter coming in to undercut that, and like, what, we can never do anything with him here. We've talked about that. That
right.
No other houses get to do anything because the famous Harry Potter's here, and he's not asking for it. It just seems to happen. And I like how it goes through. It felt like an immensely long walk. The top of the table didn't seem to be getting any nearer at all, and he could feel hundreds and hundreds of eyes upon him as though each were a searchlight. The buzzing grew louder and louder. After what seemed like an hour, he was right in front of Dumbledore, feeling the stares of all the teachers upon him. And I love the way it opens up, him being singled out, again, seemingly for being special for some reason, but he's not asking for it, and he's afraid of it at times, and he's very, very lonely, and rolls right from that illustration discussion, and I think it's a great, great chapter opening.
I agree.
Sorry for rambling a bit, but it's worth touching on.
No, you're good, and I don't have anything to add because you're absolutely right.
All right, mark it on the board. And I do like also that, Harry's like, I didn't put my name in. I didn't. And Ron and Hermione just stare at him blankly. And it's like, a little support here? Like, even a little bit? Like, Hermione, can you give me like it's cool. Like, just go. Like, we'll figure it out later. Like,
well, and even when he walks up to the table, Harry moved off along the teacher's table. Hagrid was seated right at the end. He did not wink at Harry or wave or give any of his usual signs of greeting. He looked completely astonished and stared at Harry as he passed like everyone else. Mm-hmm. Not even Hagrid, his biggest cheerleader, is giving him the support that he so desperately needs in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even Dumbledore too. It says, well, through the door, Harry, said Dumbledore. He wasn't smiling. And then it goes on a little while later to say how there wasn't like the twinkle in his eye or a wink or any of those things either. I guess maybe I'm confusing that a little bit with what Hagrid's part is here, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, yeah, those four people that we just mentioned are typically Harry's biggest cheerleaders, as you said, and kind of trust fall companions. Like, if all four of them aren't really blatantly supporting him, yeah, he's going to feel alone pretty quick, and alone in a crowded room, which is even darker for his character in such a short period of time. That's it's interesting because it was such a joyous occasion, you know, like, hey, let's kick back, and oh, this is so cool, and it's gonna be really exciting all year, and yeah, it kind of stinks Angelina didn't get it, but Cedric's fine or whatever, and then it just flips the script on him so harshly. It's like, oh
my gosh. Yeah,
I don't know. And then he goes into that little room, right? And Fleur calls him a little boy, which man.
Well, and even like the visual when he first walks in, the roaring fire, the three champions looking like champions, tall like champions. They just, even standing and owning and being excited, but like proud that they got chosen. It's just such a different feeling coming from the three of them, and not each one individually, but the collection of the three champions versus little Harry Potter.
Right. Yeah, I love that call out of how he feels overshadowed, kind of. He's intimidated as he walks in and sees them.
Yes.
And he feels like he shouldn't be here himself.
Because he's younger, because he's smaller, because he didn't choose this, because he doesn't know what's going on.
He doesn't feel prepared for it.
Right.
He's literally feels thrust into this, didn't ask for it, and yeah, so he is very much kind of a fish out of water as he walks into this room. And at first, you know, which I realize right now, we actually didn't name her last chapter as a newly named character, but Fleur Delacour should have been named in chapter 16. We referenced her as a girl from Beauxbaton, but so like Harry walks into that little room and she's like, is there a message for us? And he's just sitting there because he's still pretty dumbstruck at the turn of events. And then, everyone else comes in and their reactions are all really understandable. And Fleur is just like, this little boy, you know, says he's supposed to be a champion. And Harry, I like how he's a little bit, taken back.
Somewhere on the line is, somewhere under Harry's numb disbelief, he felt a ripple of anger. And it's almost like the voice that he heard when he was being under the Imperious Curse, like that layer of calm, and not that this is calm, but that just sense of not feeling anything, just being like the dead
numbness.
Feeling.
Yeah,
that there with Moody, there was like that underlying, well, I don't want to, and here it's the underlying, wait, hold on, that's not okay.
Whoa! Like, regardless of what's going on, that's not cool. Like, don't do that.
Right.
And we know that he would never be the person who's like, don't you realize who I am? I am Harry Potter. But like, he wouldn't be wrong if he was saying that. Like, if he was like, but I mean, I am kind of a big deal. Like, not by choice, but it's
right.
It's kind of a thing. So, but yeah, and it's just like a growing pain for Harry as well. Like, because he is a little boy here, especially in this group, and he feels that way, but it's kind of overly obviously pointed out to him. And again, it kind of makes her look like she feels like she's better than him fundamentally. And that's not going to sit well with Harry. So,
no.
But I do think the headmaster's reactions were all very understandable. You know, Maxine and Karkaroff are very, very frustrated by this. What do you think on that?
I would have been the same. Even though we tend to take Hogwarts-centric perspectives as we read this because, you know, that's our school. But I don't think they're unreasonable in their feelings about this, their frustration, their anger, their demanding equality.
Feeling of being cheated.
Yes. I don't think that's unreasonable or unexpected. I would like to see a little bit more empathy towards the kid who like blatantly didn't put his stuff in, but they're more concerned about their own kids and not this other random Hogwarts kid.
Yeah, it's a lot going on in a very short amount of time. It's like, it makes sense that they're like, well, why did you guys cheat? Like, well, that's not cool. That wasn't in the rules. It didn't say, hey, feel free to cheat. And I think it's also kind of interesting that the two objective judges are both British ministry officials who would have gone to Hogwarts as well. It's like, how objective can they really be?
Like, is this really fair and impartial?
Yeah, I think it's completely reasonable for, like, Karkaroff to call him out, be like, this is not right. Like, you guys led us here under false pretenses, and clearly even your ministry is involved in this scandal or whatever. I don't think he's completely wrong to feel that way. I don't think he's right, but he's not wrong to feel that way at all.
I agree.
Somebody that was very unreasonable, Snape.
Oh my gosh.
I literally just put Snape, #shake my head. Give it a rest. Like, stop trying to actively undermine, 1, Harry, and 2, Dumbledore at every public chance you get. Because the last time that we saw him with Fudge, he was going off crazy at the end of book 3, right? And it's like, just grow up. Like, whatever your problem is, like, stop trying to use this passive-aggressive, like, oh, he's been thwarting rules since he got here. Like, it's not surprising. Like, save it, okay? We get it.
Do you remember in the early books that every time something went wrong, Harry was blaming Snape?
Now he should be.
Right. Well, now it's like Snape's taken on that role.
Mm-hmm.
Every time something goes wrong, I'm going to blame Harry.
It was Harry. It has to be Harry.
Harry's been out of school for 7 years and has a family. You know what I mean? The kids aren't even there. It's got to be Harry Potter. Dude, I'm on vacation in Majorca.
It was probably your darn kids. You just like your father, strutting around.
My kid's 3. Like, not even, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's always going to be Harry.
It's irrational, and yeah. I don't like Snape.
I can see why in this particular chapter.
And I do like Moody. I think he comes in and kind of gives Harry the first real support of anybody, right? I mean, he's kind of like,
yes.
The person that should be mad about being forced into this is Harry. He didn't ask for this, and guess what? It's a dangerous thing. Someone's probably trying to get him killed. Yeah, it makes Moody look, I don't know, not suspicious, but very,
Well, he said, I have to think like a dark wizard. He is definitely thinking like a dark wizard because
it makes him look paranoid is what I was going for.
Yes.
But
it's not a bad thing to be paranoid about because
it's very empathetic of him again.
Yeah, well, and the point he makes of you had to hoodwink the cup because the cup always picks 3.
Mm-hmm. Like,
regardless.
It's bigger than, we kind of touched on this, right? At the end of last chapter. And
we did, didn't we?
It's like, yeah, it's more than just getting your name in there, which, sure, there would have been, because even they were like, did you ask an older student to put your name in? So clearly that was an option.
Right.
But the fact that it's a 4th champion is the thing that everyone seems to be missing, but Moody doesn't. And I'm not saying that Dumbledore is not realizing that, but he's kind of avoiding talking. He's still figuring things out, but Moody, like, blatantly is like, okay, yeah, it's a lot bigger of a deal than just putting your name in there. Like, the 4 champion thing, that's what concerns me.
I agree. That one, and then, like, the fact that he points out that the only person not complaining is Harry. So can we talk about Harry not being the complaining one really quick?
Yes.
Kind of ties right into that. Is this a case, like, is he numb and can't say anything? Or is this a case of Harry falling back on the old standby of, the adults are talking to me and I don't really agree with anything they're saying, so I'm just going to sit here quietly and let them talk themselves out, as we've seen him do in the past?
I think it could be. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I typically think of it, and I think on the surface you're kind of supposed to, with he's just numb, things are moving very quickly, and he's just kind of blown away by some of these things. But I like the idea of, you know what? It's probably just better off if I don't say anything. He's very good at not incriminating himself further in things. Even when he is innocent, he very much knows when to keep your trap shut, kind of thing. And It's definitely a skill he's got, as we've seen multiple times. And I like that. You know, it's sometimes do nothing. The do nothing option is always on the table.
It's always a good choice, at least in terms of when nobody's told you specifically to do something. I'm just going to sit here and do nothing, and hopefully no one will notice.
I'm going to sit here pretending I don't exist.
Well, that's what he was told to do, right?
It's literally how he was raised.
Yeah.
So there's one positive thing from the way that the Dursleys raised him, I guess. It's a very perverse way of looking at it, but it's a positive characteristic, I think.
I think he puts a good spin on it.
Yes, he's got rose-tinted glasses on this ability he's developed.
Yes.
So what else do you have? I'll get to my last note at the very end.
So I have, okay. I'm going to put my teacher hat on for a second. Like, I always feel like I have to preface this. I feel bad, like, because it's every time. Is it reasonable to exempt the champions from end of year exams? It really bothers me.
I thought about putting a note on this. I was like, I'll leave it out. She'll get something. She'll reference it.
Yes, there might be, because what is the line? Let me see if I can find it. The champions are not permitted to ask for or accept help of any kind from their teachers to complete the tasks in the tournament. The champions will face the first challenge armed with only their wands. They will receive information about the second task when the first is over. Owing to the demanding and time-consuming nature of the tournament, the champions are exempt from end-of-the-year tests. Demanding and time-consuming.
I mean, we don't know anything about these tasks. They could be long-term type things. You know, they could be physically, well, we know it's dangerous, right? We know that's been very well stated. I mean,
and there might need to be like research and sort of outside of class effort put in.
Yeah. I don't think it's completely unreasonable. I think it's unreasonable for it to be all of the exams, maybe.
I think it defeats the purpose of going to school for an education.
I think it is kind of like if you can successfully, well, one, if you're being chosen, clearly, if it is very merit-based, you've kind of already proven it's some fashion, or however this impartial judge knows this, you've already proven that you can cope and that you're talented or whatever. And
that you're talented in relation to the other people who entered from your school.
Right.
Not that
it's a relative. Yep. I don't know. And maybe it's kind of showing that, well, if you can get through and figure out what all these tasks are, maybe there's a lot of research that covers multiple different areas of learning that you would just be tested out, almost. It's like, well, why can't, if I'm a 7th year, why can't I just say that I'm graduated instead then? Like, what's the point?
Right. And aren't they supposed to sit for their Newt level exams?
Right. I mean, this could be, I guess maybe that could go on your resume. Like, oh, didn't do Newts because I was a champion.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's this age restriction, it can only, 1.5 years out of every 2 terms of school, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's a pretty limited crew that could get it.
I think plus then you're telling them this at the end of October. You're saying the next 6 months of learning don't really matter.
Right.
That the only things you need to learn are to help you not die in these tasks.
Mm-hmm.
None of the rest of your lessons matter.
Yeah, but I guess it needs to go into their personal fortitude to continue their studies adequately.
In which case,
integrity.
They take the exam.
Yeah, maybe they could still choose to. It just says they're exempt. It doesn't mean they're prevented from taking them.
I suppose. That would bother me.
I know it would. It clearly does.
I mean, even as a student.
I know.
Part of me as a student would be like, no, yay, I don't have to take it. But in terms of graduating or getting whatever sort of certification you get from Hogwarts, does it prevent that from happening?
Right. And I think that's kind of what my point of, it would be on your resume, and wherever you were applying would look at that and say, okay, well, they don't have this, but they were a Triwizard champion. Maybe that's, sufficient for many jobs.
All right.
I don't know.
All right. Next thought, Mr. Crouch still calls Percy Weatherby.
Yeah.
Want to point out, still happening.
A little over-enthusiastic, maybe.
Yeah, I love that too.
He clearly knows who he is, though, so that's good.
Yes, he does, and he left him in charge.
Yeah, it seems to be gaining responsibility and welcoming it,
and performing well.
Yeah,
yeah. I just think Fred and George need to know that Percy's last name is still Weatherby. That's all. I think that's important.
Yeah,
and then our last thoughts tend to coincide.
Okay, so Harry goes back into, as they're walking back from the little room, and he's walking with Cedric, and Cedric is like, okay, level with me. How'd you get your name in? And Harry's like, I didn't. I really didn't. And Cedric kind of gives him the kind of blow off of, yeah, okay, all right, that's fine. Whatever. And then they, kind of go their separate ways. Harry goes up to the Gryffindor common room and is, hit by this wave of applause and an explosion of celebration. and everyone's, just consistently, how'd you get your name in? Like, oh, okay, that's fine. Like, okay, whatever, but how'd you get your name in? Like, everyone has to ask him these questions and make it a big deal and celebrate around him, and he just wants to go to bed. He's like, I don't want any food. Like, I had enough at the feast. Like, it's literally called a feast. I played my part there.
And I'm probably nauseous and overwhelmed. And
yeah, like a good cup of sleep would go well right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
So literally nobody is believing that he didn't put his name in. I don't know if we got much from Hermione, right?
She wasn't in there. He couldn't find Hermione or Ron in the party.
Yeah, that's right. So, like, there's, again, some of these people you're looking to kind of rely on in these times of high tension that, again, it just feels maybe not abandoned, but definitely alone and not well supported. But kind of the final straw on that is even Ron doesn't believe him.
Oh, and
it's a pretty big hit.
I know. I almost picked this for my favorite line, but it's not a favorite because it's so gut-wrenching. But if the beginning of the chapter started so well and had Harry feeling so alone and overwhelmed and shocked, even though the chapter lightened up for a bit, there was some lighthearted Dumbledore moments at one point, and the party, it was nice to see a little bit of Gryffindor support. But this brings it crashing right back down. The last paragraph reads, he wrenched the hanging shut around his four-poster, leaving Harry standing there by the door, staring at the dark red velvet curtains, now hiding one of the few people he had been sure would believe him. That without Ron, who can he count on?
Right. And
if he can't count on Ron, he really is alone.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen, Harry can still get by, because they've had their differences with Hermione a bit, with here and there. They've had a tumultuous relationship, and they seem to kind of get on okay without her a bit. We haven't really seen Harry without Ron, and that's like his real best friend. All love for Hermione and everything, but when it comes down to that's your best bud, that's what Ron is, and that's
his person.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big hit to the emotional side of things for Harry here.
Yeah, I really liked this chapter.
I did too. It's I think it's really well written. There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, some really bad downs, and it's all very well done.
So, Luke, I think that brings us to your 5 burning questions. What do you got for me?
Question 1. Is Snape capable of not trying to undermine Dumbledore's authority every time he's in a public space?
Yes.
Is he?
If Harry is not involved.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Snape is perfectly capable and even has instances where he does defer to Dumbledore's authority, except when the student named Harry Potter is directly or indirectly or even assumed to be remotely involved, because there's a blind spot the size of Mount Rushmore for Snape when it comes to Harry Potter.
Yep. And that is the assumption that I was making
I know.
when it has to deal with Harry. And I'm glad you pointed it out, because I should have had a better, more well-written question.
So he is capable.
He is capable.
Not when Harry's involved. When Harry's involved, no, he is not capable.
I completely agree with you. Okay. Question 2. Do you think that Durmstrang will actually boycott the next tournament?
I'd like to see him try. Go ahead. We'll find somebody else. We don't need you.
Will they?
Why not?
If these are the 3 European schools, I guess...
Pull the schools from Africa. It's not necessarily that much farther, depending on where on the continent it's located.
That's true.
Honestly, it's a Triwizard tournament, not the Hogwarts Beauxbaton Durmstrang tournament. So I just need 3. Doesn't matter where it comes from.
Yeah. We don't need tradition necessarily. It just needs to fit the main rules of the game.
If somebody chooses not to, it's not like I'm going to replace you, but if you choose not to participate, I'm not going to make my school and the other school who still wants to be involved suffer. We're going to figure it out without you.
Yeah, we literally can afford not having you there. That's fine.
Yeah, no worries.
Question 3. So it says it requires courage in the face of the unknown, right? What is the first task?
For me, it would be like walking in a cave and being told I had to find another exit.
Go in and don't come out the same way.
Because being trapped in like enclosed spaces and, being like not necessarily buried alive, but that whole trapped in a cave and
Claustrophobic type feelings.
More like I can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way out. So that would require courage on my part. Like you have to go into this and find your way out, and you have no idea how to get out or that there even is. Like you just assume through
or what you're going to find on the way.
Right. See,
Yeah.
that would be something that would require a lot of courage on my part.
There you go.
That and, like a room full of spiders.
Yeah, I was going to go with the room full of spiders. You just have to go in there. It's like Fear Factor. We're going to lay you in this glass tank and just cover you up with tarantulas and a couple boa constrictors, and we'll see if you can survive.
Last one standing wins.
But you can't be fatal, so maybe there's a time limit. As long as you get, over whoever, it just goes by time, how long it takes you. Whoever stays in the longest wins.
Yeah, and like we won't tell you that they're not poisonous.
Right.
You don't need to know that.
Right.
Okay.
There you go. Good answers.
Courage. I don't know. Maybe they have to take like some sort of truth serum and then line up with every person who they've ever disliked in their life.
That's pretty funny. All right, you deal with the ramifications. If you can go through this, you're a champion.
It's not unlike something done in the Divergent series, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Nice.
So, see?
I think it makes sense. All right, these were all good guesses.
Excellent.
Question 4. How will the rest of the school react to Harry being a 4th champion?
Well, Gryffindor's pretty down with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Slytherin always hates Harry. So
it's a given either way.
Yeah. Hufflepuff has Cedric.
Right. And they're already a little cross just for the whole thing. They were pretty upset.
They're going to be Team Cedric.
Reasonable.
I don't think Ravenclaw will even notice.
They're like Triwizard Tournament? What's that? Was that in one of your little grade school books? No, we're past those. We don't need those books.
I'm over it. Oh, I'm sorry. An athletic competition?
Sign me out.
Please no. Can I get my mom to waive it? I don't participate. Physical activity.
I need the doctor's note.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different than maybe when Harry was accused of being the heir of Slytherin, except we know not Hufflepuff, definitely not. We know Gryffindor's got his back, so that'd be all right.
Yeah. Last question. Could Harry be lying about putting his name in there?
Theoretically, yes. I mean, he could theoretically be lying. I don't think he is. I don't think he's quick-witted enough to be that good of an actor to play disbelief as much as he is.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing is we haven't really seen the unreliable or lying to us narrator. Like, He's actively saying in his head, I didn't do this. And even like the narrator seems to agree, but there could be like a Tyler Durden thing going on. Like, that's kind of where I'm going. Like, it's more of just kind of a silly question. Yes, especially because we haven't seen that, but that doesn't mean it's out of the question.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with you. He could have done it. I just don't think it's very likely. And that takes us into our chapter superlatives. So, Luke, go ahead and tell us, what was your favorite line?
Did you put your name into the goblet of fire, Harry? He asked calmly. No, said Harry. That's my favorite line in this chapter.
I just didn't pick 3 words.
Say that again. Oh, he said calmly.
He said calmly. That's it.
He asked calmly. Sorry.
He asked calmly. Yes, that's what I assumed you would pick. That would be those 3 words.
That's the crux of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. That's all I got. Okay.
Well, that's not true. I have a part A and a part B. It is one favorite line that I like for 2 separate reasons.
Okay.
Based on... Okay, I'll explain. Here's part A. Not line 1. Part A. Dumbledore must have made a mistake with the line, said Madame Maxine, shrugging. It is possible, of course, said Dumbledore. I like that. Mm-hmm. That's part A. I like that Dumbledore's like, well, sure, I could have made a mistake.
That's possible.
It's not outside the realm of possibility that a mistake could have been made by me, theoretically. Sure.
He's humble about it. You know, he's like, yeah, that's possible.
It's possible. So I really like that idea that Dumbledore doesn't get self-righteous and back himself up. No, I would, but like, okay, sure.
Yeah, no, that is in the realm of possibility right now. Yep.
But you know, he's like smiling about it, like, sure, no problem, maybe. But part B is the line immediately following that.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbledore, you know perfectly well you did not make a mistake, said Professor McGonagall angrily, because she cannot even handle anybody even suggesting that Dumbledore would be even possible to make a mistake. That is not likely or even probable. It is very, very, very unlikely that Dumbledore would have made a mistake. He knows he didn't make a mistake. You know he didn't make a mistake. How dare you accuse him? She's got to back up her man.
Yeah, I am so glad you picked that line, because I'm going to go ahead and roll right into my favorite character, the chapter MVP, and it's Professor McGonagall, because as that line continues, it says, "Really, what nonsense. Harry could not have crossed that line himself, and as Professor Dumbledore believes that he did not persuade an older student to do it for him, I'm sure that should be good enough for everyone else." She shot a very angry look at Snape. I just love it. I love it, because she's like, no, this is completely ridiculous. Like, she does back Harry up well as well. And
yes.
like between her and Moody are the only ones that are like, okay, like, let's get past the confusing parts. Like, but yeah, everything that you said along with your line, you know perfectly well you didn't make a mistake. And she said to Snape angrily, she shot a very angry look at Professor Snape.
I love that. And
it's so good.
Anytime somebody's mad at Snape, you'll back that person.
Oh, yeah, they're on my team. That's for sure.
So I do have an honorable mention.
Okay.
Dumbledore.
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, for staying calm in the face of adversity in the room.
Very, very calm. Nice
Being
job.
the voice of reason.
Calmly.
Very calmly. For admitting that he could have made a mistake by owning that it is possible that he is a flawed human and that it could have happened.
Calm and humble. I like it.
Mm-hmm. And at the end, he tries to diffuse the situation by inviting everyone for a nightcap to try and ease back into building relationships with the other adults in the room. Most people don't take him up on it, except for Bagman, but at least he makes the attempt to start smoothing things over. So a diplomat, a calm, humble diplomat. Calm,
humble, and courteous.
Yes.
It was very calming, super calm. Calm.
And that about wraps us up for this chapter. You can join us in all of our ramblings about how wonderful Dumbledore is at staying calm at Not Named Podcast on Twitter. You can send us your emailed thoughts at thepodcastthat@gmail.com. You can find us online at thepodcastthat.com. You can also join our Patreon, where we have lots of extras for you, including our 5-chap recap unrestricted section for all of our Imaginary Legion patrons. To patreon.com/stayimaginary and join at any level. So any support you give helps us keep the lights on and the digital owls being sent out to you. And you can hear all of our fantastic recaps along with lots of other bonuses and extras we have for all of our special listeners.
For other ways you can help support our show, check out thepodcastthat.com/support us and see the interesting items we have curated in our Amazon affiliate store, or listen to our show on Radio Public. They give us a nice little kickback for different listeners, so it's a very easy way for you to use their free app and help support our show just by listening. Subscribe, rate, and leave comments on iTunes and YouTube. We would truly appreciate it.
Join us next week when we discuss chapter number 18.
The Weighing of the Wands. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.